On this episode, I'm going to justify the reasons you should read more dangerous books. These novels cover a wide range of categories, but they are generally books that are outside your lane. Books that you may even find distasteful or troubling. They may not be for everyone, so why read them? These texts uncover how our ideologies have been shaped and how your common assumptions are based on sometimes shaky ground. And all of us can learn quite a bit about who we are, even through a book's bad or ugly ideas. Because reading disturbing classics isn't about forgiving its authors. It's about understanding what they reveal. I should explain a little background first. Much of my own perspective is shaped by my academic foundation. And at the college level, we tend to read a bit differently than just for enjoyment. Critical reading is taught as a form of evaluating and analyzing ideas and narratives. And it is a primary mode by which we tend to read. This kind of reading is not restricted just to English majors. Most disciplines practice some form of critical reading, hopefully. However, the purpose of critical reading in literature is not only to understand a novel's intentions, but more so to find value in dissecting a text's form, context, and implicit assumptions. Through this kind of reading, we hope to gain further insights into the tapestry of interconnections undergirding a text's foundations. So, reading a book is not about advocacy for its views. The purpose is actually to understand why and how it exists. Now that has been established, let's dive into the reasons why you should read dangerous books. We're going to work through four reasons and also some concrete examples. Reading dangerous books prompts readers to read against the grain. This is different than how we might have learned how to read books in a high school class. I don't know about your high school experience, but when I was handed a novel in high school, it felt like it was up to us, the kids, to justify reading it, to justify essentially its greatness. We, in fact, began with the assumption that it was a great novel, and we
Huh?
kind of had to
Huh?
figure out why. Perhaps this will resonate with a few viewers. That starting point, reading the author's intentions, is reading with the grain. It's how many audiences begin reading critically, especially when texts are called literature. That's how I began to read, in fact. On the other hand, reading against the grain means beginning with the assumption that the writing may not only be imperfect, but it may have flaws. This isn't to suggest that readers should stand in opposition to their book. Rather, reading against the grain means understanding that a text is a complex product of humans, and it is subject to the same complexities as its author and their history and culture. Three excellent examples for reading against the grain are Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, and To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. These dangerous books attempt heightened romantic or progressive values. But more modern readers may uncover potentially discouraging questions at their core. Conrad's Heart of Darkness takes readers into the darkest parts of Africa. But embedded in this depiction is the author's impression that Africa is a void and that Africans are symbols of that dark emptiness, which is a 19th century, early 20th century perspective on civilization and colonialization. This perspective was so embedded in how people viewed the continent, and indeed Conrad's books, that Chinua Achebe's 1977 essay on Conrad, An Image of Africa, met with this swell of controversy. Some readers defended the book as an anti imperialist novel, while others, like Edward Said, said that despite Conrad's severe critique of imperialism, the author did not seem to grant Africans the freedom his novel implied. Even with its surface intentions, a counter reading may actually find that despite its power, Heart of Darkness also lies on a foundation of faulty racial and colonial assumptions. I've mentioned Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind many times on this channel. On its surface, Mitchell portrays a woman's epic survival through the Civil War and also what's called a lost cause story that maintains the romantic South. Again, however, modern readers may find a parallel counter narrative that builds her notions of the South on the backs of enslaved peoples and their implicit subjugation. So, Gone with the Wind reveals that its romantic, page turning creations cannot be separated from the aggressive ideologies it actually generates. Finally, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird remains one of my favorite books, and indeed, favorite books to teach. But it's not without its own historically embedded conventions. It may intend to appeal to past audiences with a white view into racial inequalities. It fits the time. However, reading against the grain may force us to ask difficult questions about whose perspectives are privileged and who is allowed to speak for whom. This might be said for an outsider like Boo Radley, who is regarded with sympathy but remains largely outside Scout's narrative. A book's original reactions, as well as its reception since its publication, reveals sensibilities about its historical audiences. So, a reader is often as much a part of any text as any other component. And an audience's lens on a book tells us both about the individual and the cultural concerns. Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin is a good example of a radically different reception between its publication and now. As mentioned in Gethsemane and Foamshee's article, Stowe's novel stoked anti-abolitionism at a time especially when the nation was gearing up for war, which allegedly prompted Abraham Lincoln at the time to credit her with rallying the northern states. This famous piece of literature gives readers a tangible sense of the white abolition movement's historical character, as well as an important peek into a protest culture of America's mid 19th century. Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God gives other lessons about how audiences receive a text over time. When it was first published, Richard Wright criticized it for not being a protest novel. After Their Eyes Were Watching God nearly faded from history, Alice Walker rediscovered it in about 1975, and she brought it to the public awareness. The qualities that made it infamous at its publication eventually made it famous these many decades later. It demonstrates not only the concerns of a strengthening Black feminist movement, but also a shift in concerns about preserving an African American literary heritage. Finally, Huckleberry Finn, the famous novel by Mark Twain, has gained a reputation as a cornerstone of American literature from such figures as Ernest Hemingway. However, its readership since its crest in the 20th century shows us America's complicated relationship with history and Black representation. It reproduces a racial dynamics between Jim and Huck that it also appears to critique within its pages. However, both readings, one that valorizes it and another that critiques it, exist concurrently for readers today. We acknowledge both of those. For example, Percival Everett's excellent rewrite in the novel James articulates several sides of Huckleberry Finn's cultural and historical receptions that run sometimes against the grain and also with the grain. These dangerous books ideally provoke readers into perceiving literature's many faces, and they help audiences recognize how their own contexts and perspectives shape texts. Other dangerous books put us in impossible ethical positions. Through their complexities, they train us to practice discomfort and hold on to several opposing positions at a time. This first example floored me when I first read it in my late teens. No other book had couched historical events with such urgency and imperative. Before I tell you about Beloved, however, by Toni Morrison, I will warn you that there's going to be a spoiler about an important scene. So hit mute if you have these concerns. I'll place a note on the screen when you can unmute. Quick note: in school, we don't usually consider spoilers during discussions or analyses, but some viewers are vehement about them on YouTube. So I just try to be sensitive to these wishes. A big reveal in Beloved is also the reason Setha is haunted by her baby daughter's ghost. In her past, as she is pursued by catchers, Setha tries to protect her baby from slavery and violence. So she ends the child's life. This impossible moment of suffering is a result not only of extreme emotional distress, but of the real violence, commodification, and captivity that threatens Setha and her beloved. The haunting is a metaphor for this trauma. Readers are then left with this unresolvable horror, which parallels the broader and irreconcilable history of American slavery itself. Another important tome in American literature is Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. It has a number of conundrums, which include the battle royale scene, wherein Black characters are coerced to fight one another for money in front of a drunk white audience. This part of the story makes the narrator complicit in his own humiliation. But no one survives this novel unscathed from their own internalized contradictions. Notably, the narrator meets white liberal allies, and they play out very recognizable self deceptions. But those same characters never seem to see their own contradictions. So, the book plays out multiple identifiable roles that demonstrate how racism and inequality get disseminated, even by those with good intentions. Readers are confronted with their own participation in the very social structures they may try to oppose. Another very weighty book is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. It has been at the center of controversy since its publication. And also, it's been a familiar symbol of social protest. Readers of this book are immediately thrown into an unfamiliar world in which women are forced into a restrictively fundamentalist caste system. The protagonist, Offred, is a handmaid, and she's forced to breed babies for this national leadership. The novel's trick is its demonstration over the course of the novel how this world has devolved slowly from our own. The novel's chilling message echoes how quickly society can change and how atrocities can become normalized. But it also asks important questions about who will act in the face of cascading social setbacks. Other novels have likewise left audience unspared from difficult ethical dilemmas. These include Absalom Absalom, The Grandissimes, Mouse, The Vegetarian, Lord of the Flies, also a Netflix show right now, and Jane Austen's Mansfield Park. If you like dangerous novels with challenging questions, these books provide them. Next, what happens when books don't just reflect harmful ideologies? They are designed for them. The purpose of this reasoning is often to expose assumptions you may not have known you had. So, these books reveal misunderstood blind spots and they push boundaries to uncover difficult lessons for you, the reader. But these challenges may actually offer new, hard won insights. I'm still unsettled by this first book, and really so are many, many other audiences. Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita remains the focus of uncomfortable battles over reading. In particular, the novel's meanings are pretty ambiguous, and lots of recent documentaries still scour the author's history to either support or undermine the book's seeming intentions. Specifically, the novel's narrator, Humbert Humbert, reasons in beautiful prose, but his story reveals some pretty deeply troubling justifications and also a persistent obsession with a young ward in his care named Dolores. The only hints of abuse are in the gaps in Humbert's story. Some scholars have defended Lolita as a devious demonstration of blind male manipulations of femininity from youth to adulthood. Made worse is the narrator's faulty reasoning wrapped in monstrously aestheticized prose. Other critics question the need to go to Nabokov's lengths to prove his point. Understandably. In the end, Lolita demonstrates that harmful ideas can be easily packaged in beautiful, authoritative language, which requires us to have a critical eye over a novel's events. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle was required reading in many classrooms, at least when I was growing up. While Sinclair vocally intended really to expose harmful working conditions and also promote workers' rights, he self admittedly, quote, aimed at the public's heart and hit its stomach, both at its publication and in the present. The consistent lesson that readers draw from this book is food hygiene, and that's at the expense of the novel's argument for labor. The issue of workers' rights remains routinely, but not wholly, ignored even today. In the novel's aftermath, Congress at the time passed the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drug Act. Teddy Roosevelt commissioned the Neil Reynolds Report to investigate sanitation. But again, neither body responded to the novel's messages and need for labor reform. Later, in 1976, an article in the American Journal for Public Health by A.F. Cantor reiterated the novel's enduring influence on public food safety. In fact, it studied reactions to it. Aside from the immediate ethical questions about working conditions, the book's tough lessons about public awareness really reveal that an author's target does not always, or even perhaps rarely, determines readers' reception. Other possibilities for ethically challenging novels include 100 Years of Solitude, A Clockwork Orange, American Psycho, Nickel and Dimed, and The Known World. So, what can we take away from this idea of dangerous books? Sometimes the most important books are the ones that inspire anxiety and apprehension, but offer insight into our own uncritical values or blind spots. Being able to see through the beautiful lies is one of the most valuable lessons literature can teach you. Before we adjourn, which reasons resonated the most with you? What books have you read that align with that reason you selected? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. This has been Tilting at Tomes. As always, I'm Ben.